Good afternoon and welcome to our Google Plus Hangout today on LATimes.com. And we're talking today, what a lot of people are talking about is what is that smell? For hours now, Southern California fire officials and environmental officials have been inundated by calls about this sort of rotten egg stench that has been permeating parts of Southern California today. And we're joined to talk about this with Andrew Blankstein, who is part of the team that's been sort of trying to figure out what's going on here. Welcome, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Shelby. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so first question is, this stench has kind of been spread over a long area, basically from the Coachella Valley and over into Riverside, all the way to the Santa Clarita Valley, even to Ventura County. What do the fire officials say about what they're hearing from residents?
Well, depending on who you talk to, Los Angeles City seems to have gotten the most calls about this. Literally hundreds coming in at their peak between 50 and 60 an hour. And Ventura County got enough calls to prompt their hazardous materials team to be sent out to check the air to see what was going on. So obviously this sparked a lot of concern about residents who had really never smelled this, and it was over a very wide area.
Yeah, and of course officials are investigating, AQMD included, and they have not reached a final cause, but what they're saying that the most likely outcome is the Salton Sea. And as many of you know, every year around this time, there's a big die-off of fish from the Salton Sea, and normally that causes stench problems kind of inland empire in the Coachella Valley. But this time around, it's spread much further. And Andrew, what are the experts saying about why they think that stench spread so far into the LA basin?
Well, it's interesting because when we called Riverside Fire Authorities, they said, well, we didn't really get that many calls because they're used to this every year. But because of the weather patterns, you have high pressure that's parked over the southwest, and it's very humid air, thunderstorms, the kind of air is kind of heavy and sits there, and moving from, instead of what we were used to earlier this summer from offshore inland, it's coming up from the south and also coming from the southwest out. So what's happened is that air which would have moved inland is actually moving west, and so where we wouldn't have smelled something like that in a regular pattern, because of the way things are kind of lining up, we're actually smelling it this far east. Again, very unusual, and talking to weather officials and other people, it's kind of added to this mystery because, again, this is such an unusual event.
Yeah, and it is interesting that one thing that we do know from weather officials as well as people who are at the Salton Sea is that last night there were some thunderstorms, some winds, and one official in the Salton Sea said there were like 30-mile-an-hour winds that kind of swept through the sea, and his speculation was that possibly sort of kind of churned the surface of the water a little bit where these dead fish are, and that sort of basically caused a big stink to blow, I guess, westward from the southeast and into more populated parts of Southern California. But Andrew, as you said, they're still investigating exactly what happened.
Yeah, and we've talked to the weather officials, the U.S. Geological Survey, various fire departments, Salton Sea officials. So, even though there's kind of a guess right now, there's not an absolute bottom line, and we're going to keep working on that today.
Right, and I guess one of the things that's really interesting that's kind of going on here is that if it is a Salton Sea, I know that some of the officials, one of our reporters, Jason Song and Hector Becerra, talked to the officials of the Salton Sea, preserve there, and they said this would really be unprecedented for that kind of smell to have traveled so far so fast, and so there's still little skepticism whether that could really be the cause, but it sounds like no other real cause has been determined other than that.
Right. I mean, that would surprise me, again, talking to the Simi officials in Ventura County and what they smelled in Simi Valley, that obviously was strong enough for residents to call the fire department, and then they sent out a hazardous materials team to check it out. So, I can't remember anything at the 22 years that I've been at the paper, and we were kind of all scratching our heads trying to figure out, well, what could it be? I mean, is it oil? Is it something from the sewers? Is it, what is it? And I think, as you said, the fact that it's so far to the east from this would be a real surprise, but clearly it's right now the best explanation that we have.
Yeah, and it sounds like it also sounds like it's somewhat scattered. I think we've heard a lot of reports in the Inland Empire, in both Riverside and San Bernardino County, into parts of the San Gabriel Valley, definitely in parts of the northern San Fernando and Santa Clarita valleys, then into Simi Valley and kind of into that area of Ventura County. Yeah, I know there's some places where people have walked out signs that I don't smell anything, and I guess one of the questions we're going to have to kind of figure out today is why it is that it could be so widespread in certain areas and then in other areas you just don't smell it or smell something much more faint.
Yeah, no, it's true. And again, we had this very kind of nice, unseasonably cool summer. Now we have very humid air, almost like the East Coast. And the fact that how did those winds get it out here, and how did it scatter it? I mean, I think that'll be one of the things that obviously we'll be pursuing in the days to come.
Right, and I guess my last question for Andrew is, some of the people who have been talking to us and smelling this and all that, they've described it different ways. Some people say, God, it smelled like there might be a brush fire nearby. Some people said it smelled like rotten eggs. But one thing that seems like a common denominator is a lot of people listen to this, or smell this rather, and think that their sewer system is backed up.
Yeah, and every once in a while you get that in the city where people have that sulfur smell. There's been reports over the years, but again, to have it over such a wide, geographical area from Simi Valley all the way to Coachella is nothing that I've ever heard before. I don't know about you.
And I guess one of the questions I think we're also trying to figure out is whether we think this is slowly dissipating. A lot of these calls occurred in the morning,
That's right.
the early afternoon, and I haven't been outside, so I don't know whether the smell is dissipated, but we'll find out. And stay with LATimes.com for the latest on the big stink. And Andrew, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us.
Thanks for having me on, Shelby.
Okay. And stay with LATimes.com and LA Now for the latest on this. And thanks for watching.